Welcome to Lizzie's Bedtime Stories Valentine Special 2016. My guest is a returning champ, R.G. Manuel, and she has a great piece in Through the Hourglass, and she's going to read for us.
Hi, Liz. Hi.
Hi. So tell my listeners a little bit of lead up, and then you can start reading.
Okay, the story is called The Rum Runner and the Showgirl, and it takes place in the 20s, the late 20s, and it's about a showgirl who meets a young man who she is a lesbian, but she's attracted to this young man in an odd way, and he's a rum runner, and she has this feeling that she knows him from somewhere, and the rum runner is attracted to her as well. And so the story kind of reveals how they know each other and where they take it from there.
Cha-cha-cha. Okay, why don't you start on then?
Okay. Fanny looked into the spotlight. A deep breath filled her lungs with cigarette smoke. Then she belted out the last line of her song until her voice reached the soaring final note. A wave of applause whistles filled the club, and she absorbed every clap and hoot. She'd nailed her solo on New Year's Eve. The Grand Chameleon Ballroom was a burst of silver and gold, curlicues of glittery ribbon hanging from the ceiling, garland-framed mirrors on the walls. The dance floor was packed, and every table in the house occupied. Fanny left the stage and ran to the table where Luella sat drinking Manhattan. "Fan, you were the bee's knees up there." "Yeah, now if only Mr. DeMille would find out, I'd be set." She sat down, pulled a cherry out of Luella's glass, hung it over her face, and lowered it into her mouth. The stem joined the others on the tablecloth, like a collection of tiny firewood. "Oh, he will. Mary Pickford, eat your heart out." Luella raised her glass, took a swallow, then put it down with a thud, her feathers drooping further. "What's wrong?" "It's almost midnight, and I have no one to kiss," Luella replied, pouting. "So what? Neither do I." "I guess we can always kiss each other," Luella said. The master of ceremonies grabbed the microphone. "Okay, ladies and gents, it's almost that time. 12, 11. At 10, the entire club began counting down, the collective voice growing louder and louder. Fanny and Luella stood up and joined in the chorus. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! A cacophony of cheering rose to the ceiling as the band began playing Auld Lang Syne. A few stray balloons fell, and long paper ribbons streamed across the room. "Happy New Year, doll!" Luella threw her arms around Fanny. "Happy New Year!" Fanny gave her a hug. "I have to get ready for the next number. You're done for the night, right?" "Yes," Luella said, pouting again. "I was only in the 2 numbers." "Okay, I'll see you later. Have fun." Fanny waved and went backstage. She wrinkled her nose. The back corridor reeked of gin and smelled vaguely of sex. It was starting to look like the filthy alley that harbored the secret door to the speakeasy. The repulsive activities that went on in that alley only served to drive Fanny harder toward her dream. In the dressing room, she grabbed another costume off the rack. As she fixed her skirt, her ring caught her stocking. Damn! She twisted the silk until it came free of the ring. "That looks bad," a chorus girl said as she walked by. "I know, and I go on in 10 minutes. She glared at the stocking. "Go beg Marty for that pair he's been holding on to for that trampy girlfriend of his." The girl pointed her thumb in the general direction of the manager's office. With a sigh, Fanny went down the corridor to Marty's office, steeling herself for the overtures. She raised a hand to knock, but stopped when she heard voices. Marty and Joe, the assistant manager. She leaned her ear to the door. "I'm telling you, Marty, you gotta nip this in the bud. They can't get away with this." "I know that," came Marty's reply. "Right now, I need you to stop twisting my nuts and go keep an eye on things. Think you can do that?" "Sure, boss." Fanny pulled back quickly when the door swung open. Joe headed down the corridor, and she peeked into the office. Marty picked up the phone. "Yeah, it's Marty. Send Nick over." "Yeah, I know it's New Year's Eve, but I want to settle this tonight." Fanny drew back slightly. Marty was poking the desk with his finger. Freddie, the stage manager, flew by. "You're on in 5, he said as he passed. Fanny looked into the office and waited until Marty had replaced the receiver to knock. Marty looked up. "What do you want? I'm busy." "Marty," Fanny used her sweetest voice. Would you consider lending me those silk stockings you've got? Marty studied her a moment, picked up his cigarette, took a drag, and let out a long stream of smoke. What's in it for me? He languorously raked his eyes up and down her form. She put her hands on her hips and steeled her eyes. Nothing except my gratitude. To Fanny's surprise, he acquiesced quickly. Okay, I don't have time for this. Here. He took out a red box out of the desk drawer, placed it on the desk, and took another drag of his cigarette. Just remember I did that for you. Yeah, thanks. Stockings in hand, she ran back to the dressing room. She just fastened the last garter hook when Freddie opened the door. Okay, let's go. Cafe number's out now. The band began playing 5'2" Eyes of Blue, and the chorus line danced their way onto the stage. When the number was over, Fanny stepped down from the stage and scanned the audience to find Luella. Among the sea of faces, she noticed a man who appeared to be weaving his way toward her. He broke through the crowd, caught her eye, and slowed down a bit. Did she know him? Now only inches away, his eyes seared into hers, and just when she thought he was going to stop in front of her, he kept walking and went through the door leading to the back area. Fanny felt as if she'd been kicked in the stomach. There was something about this guy, like she knew him from somewhere, though she was sure she'd never seen him before. Luella waved at her. Fanny pointed her index finger in the air. 1 minute. She walked through the door to the back area. The man turned into Marty's office. Was this the Nick that Marty had wanted to see then? When Marty had closed the door, she went to it and put her ear to the wood. I don't know what's happening, Marty said, but I want you to get it straightened out. Fanny heard something slam against Marty's desk. Here, try it. A moment of silence, then, I see. The young man's voice was softer and calmer than Marty's and more difficult to hear. Fix it. Yes, sir. The door opened. She pretended she was walking to the dressing room, then followed the young man back to the ballroom. Luella was seated at the table, talking to a man. She looked up. Fanny, this is Leon. Leon Fanny. Leon nodded. Hiya. Thanks. Pleasure to meet you. She turned to Luella. I don't want to interrupt. Sit down and join us, Leon said. We were just talking about things we like. He leered at Luella. Luella giggled, and Fanny looked around for someplace else to go, but the room was crowded. Reluctantly, she sat down. Here, have a drink. Leon pushed a full glass toward her. Fanny took the glass, sipped, and turned her head away from the conversation. At the bar was the man who'd just been in Marty's office. The bartender was leaning in. When their conversation ended, the man straightened up, fixed his tie and jacket, and pushed his hat slightly back so that it was perched on his head at an angle. On his way out, he again caught her eye. His eyes bored into hers harder than before. What are you looking at? Luella asked after he passed. Without taking her eyes off him, Fanny responded, That fella there. She jutted her chin in his direction. Luella leaned in close to her ear. That's Nick. He's one of Marty's guys, a rum runner. Fanny faced her. You've seen him before? Oh, sure. Luella pulled back and smiled. Cute, huh? Kind of looks like a Rudolph Valentino. Yeah, cute. She continued to watch him as he disappeared. I'm going to call it a night. Already? It's only 2. Happy New Year, huh? Happy New Year, doll. Get home safe. Yeah, you too. She hugged Luella and waved to Leon. Fanny got her coat and went out the back exit. The night was cold but filled with the sounds of revelers from nearby homes. This wasn't her first New Year's Eve alone, as she was sure it wouldn't be her last. But remembering special New Year's Eves with a few of the women she'd loved over the years made her chest hurt. She got in a cab and went home. By January 2nd, Fanny was ready to jump right into the new routines Freddie had choreographed. She stepped to center stage and waited for her cue, muscles aching from the intense rehearsals they'd had the past couple of weeks for Freddie's ambitious new act. It was exciting but exhausting, and she hoped her legs wouldn't buckle in the middle of her number. When the band played the right chord, Fanny began her song. A few lines in, she took some steps to the side and turned with a flourish. And when the music picked up tempo, she launched into the shimmy, her new favorite dance, because it was so naughty. If you had anything at all to jiggle, this dance saw to it that it did. The fringes of her dress swung back and forth, emphasizing the swaying of her breasts. After the last notes of the song, her chest was heaving and sweat coated her face and neck. She realized the tension in her legs and arms. She released the tension in her legs and arms and waited for Freddie's response. Okay, that's better, Freddie said. The turn toward the end is still a little sloppy. Let's clean it up. Fanny nodded and walked off the stage. In the wings, she wiped her face with a towel while the ensemble began the next number. She watched as they kicked and spun. She was going to miss these girls when she was a big star. As she looked on, she saw a figure walking into the ballroom, followed by 2 men pushing a crate. It was Nick. The big block letters across the side said coffee. They pushed the crate behind the bar and quickly exited the building. Nick spoke a moment to Freddie, then sat down at a table in the back and lit a cigarette. The bartender placed a shot glass in front of him. Nick held the glass up to the light and turned it as if inspecting the contents, glided the glass beneath his nose and sipped, then leaned back and proceeded to watch the rehearsals. There was something about him that set off sparks in Fanny's brain, and to her dismay, elsewhere. He was clean-cut and refined-looking, unlike most of the mooks who worked for the Torrenti family. Freddie approached her. "Fanny, someone wants to talk to you." He nodded at Nick. Fanny felt her limbs go numb and the sweat on her brow turned cold. Had she done something wrong? She went to Nick's table and stood in front of it, silent. Nick's gaze slowly traveled up her body until it reached her eyes. Her spine tingled. Something in his eyes stirred familiarity deep in her stomach. "Please sit down." Nick pushed a chair with his foot. Fanny sat but said nothing. Nick made her nervous in a lot of different ways. With her butt perched on the edge of the seat and her back pinned straight, she waited for him to speak. "Nick," he extended his hand. She took it. "Fanny, pleased to meet you." "Likewise." He waved at the bartender, who evidently read minds because he brought over 2 more glasses filled with an amber liquid. Nick picked up his glass and held it aloft. Fanny realized that he was waiting for her to respond. She picked up the glass with no idea of what they were toasting or why. "Have we met?" she asked. "No." Unlike his previous glass, he downed this one in its entirety, then placed it on the table and looked at her expectantly. Fanny sipped hers. The harsh liquid seared her throat before settling in her chest with a radiating warmth. "Whoopee, that's amazing. I've never had anything like it." He smiled, and it softened his features. Fanny's heart sped up. "No, I'm sure you haven't. This," he said, turning the glass in his hand, "is real Irish whiskey. No one's seen this stuff in years, not like the hooch you get in most places. So how come you have it?" Nick didn't respond, but his smile spread into a grin. Fanny took another sip. The guy was a rum runner. After a moment of silence, she looked at him. His face was thin but not angular. The curves of his cheeks were soft, and his dark almond-shaped eyes were clear and sharp with just a hint of mirth. Rudy Valentino. The whiskey heat began to spread to her extremities. Her muscles felt as if they were letting out air, and her fear of Nick was subsiding. Nick sat back and looked at her with amusement. She looked into his eyes and, in her mind, traced the lines of his lips. Then Fanny realized that she did know this person, not who he was, but what he was. She berated herself for not recognizing it sooner. She had known so many like him, yet he'd managed to fool her, briefly. There was something else, too, but for the moment she pushed that thought aside. "So why did you want to see me?" "I just thought I'd share this with you." He tapped the side of his glass. "Why?" Nick suddenly seemed unsure and shifted in his seat, looking down into his glass. Fanny leaned in very close and whispered, "I know who you are." Nick sat back and stared at her, amusement leaving his face. "I know this is all a put-on. Not that I care. I'm actually impressed." "What are you talking about?" Without really intending to, Fanny ran her eyes down to Nick's torso, his pinstripe vest neatly fastened beneath his unbuttoned jacket. But she quickly brought her eyes back up. Nick's face turned a pinkish hue. Fanny didn't know if it was embarrassment or just the booze. "It took me a bit, but I finally realized what it was." "Well?" Fanny leaned in closer, narrowed her eyes seductively, and whispered, "You're not a fella at all, are you?" Momentary panic registered in Nick's eyes, but then he grinned again. "Very good. You figured it out right out of the gate. It usually takes people a while if they figure it out at all." "So it doesn't bother you that I know?" "The better question is, does it bother you that you know?" She smiled. No. For a second or two, she couldn't stop her mind from wandering, thinking about what Nick's skin felt like. Not all women looked that dapper in men's attire. Nick was damn handsome, a real cool cat. Nick pursed her lips. "So what do you say? Would you have dinner with me?" Fanny let her smile linger for another second as she finished her naughty thoughts. She dropped her smile and sat up. "No, thanks." "Why not? Well, you thought wrong." Fanny got up and strode toward the stage, not looking back, and went directly to the dressing room. The space was empty, everyone being either on stage or in the wings. She sat on a chair and closed her eyes. Until now, it had been easy to say no to an attractive woman, even if she was passing as a man. Fanny had been strong, focused on her goals, but just now, with Nick, she'd had a moment of weakness. She could feel her shell crack and the word yes rise up in her throat. That couldn't happen. Never again. Fanny woke up, groggy. The week's performances had knocked her out. As she did every morning, she reminded herself that this was the work before the reward. Everything she was doing was going to make her the next Tallulah Bankhead, Mary Pickford, Clara Bow, or Lillian Gish. Maybe she'd even get a part in one of those new talkies. She slid out of bed and washed up. There wasn't much in the icebox, so she grabbed an apple and ate it while she sat and absentmindedly stared at the wall. A photo of new starlet Greta Garbo stared at her with sultry, demanding eyes. She'd give anything to be next to her in the movie magazines. She stopped chewing the moment and thought what to be next to her at all. Her mind went briefly to Nick, or whatever her name was. She was really attractive, but there was no way Fanny would go down that road again. She finished her apple, dressed, and headed out to the club. In the dressing room, the other girls greeted her with strange looks and mysterious little smiles. "Hi, Fanny. How's your night? Do anything special?" Luella asked. The others snickered. "What does that mean?" Fanny looked around. "Oh, nothing." Fanny went to her table and stopped abruptly. A huge vase of roses sat there. "Hey, whose flowers?" "Yours." "Mine." She sniffed one, then looked for a card. There was none. The ladies finished preparing themselves and filed out. Fanny was about to follow when Freddie stuck his head in the door. "This is for you." He handed her an envelope and walked away. Fanny stared at it and wondered if this was her pink slip. She opened it slowly. Inside was a white note. On it was written, "Have dinner with me tonight, please." It had to be Nick. Who else would it be? Fanny went out to the ballroom, and there was Nick sitting at the same table as last time, with a cigarette and a shot. Fanny approached the table. Nick started to speak, but Fanny cut her off. "Look, you seem nice, but I told you, I'm not interested." "Why?" She glared and sat down. "I don't have to explain anything to you." "Why don't you anyway? I get the feeling you probably want to." "Oh yeah? And just who do you think you are? Someone who knows your type?" "My type? And what would that be?" Nick raised an eyebrow. Fanny clenched her jaw. "You think you're so smart. Am I wrong?" "Yes." "Then tell me." "Geez, you don't take no for an answer, do you?" "No." Fanny didn't want to reveal anything about herself, but as she looked into Nick's dark eyes, her resolve ebbed. "I'm trying to make it into the moving pictures." "I see. And what does that have to do with the price of tea in China?" She gave him another glare. "If certain facts about me were discovered, I'd be drummed out of the business." Nick laughed. "Haven't you heard the rumors about Greta Garbo or Marlena Dietrich? They've been lucky. I haven't." Nick frowned. "What do you mean?" She'd already said too much. "I don't want to talk about it." And with more bravado than she felt, "It's none of your business anyway." She stood up, began to walk away, then remembered the roses and felt her entire body ripple with warmth. She turned back. "Thanks for the roses." "My pleasure." Fanny knew this wasn't the last she'd see of Nick. I'll stop there.
Ooh. I like it. I always enjoy having you on the reading shows. You do a really good job.
Well, thank you. I enjoy it myself. It's a little hard on the throat, but it's fun otherwise.
That sounded dirty.
You would think that.
I'm sick in the head, aren't I? But thanks for coming on the show and also sharing your contribution to Through the Hourglass. And for those of you who are listening, mosey on over to Amazon and pick yourself up a copy and see if this rum runner ever gets the time of day. Welcome to Lizzie's Bedtime Stories Valentine Special 2016. Jean Copeland is a contributor to Through the Hourglass. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for having me.
So how did you find the call? Like, what drew you to work on this anthology, and what inspired your story?
I learned about it through Sachi. I had contributed to her collections before, so we're friends on Facebook, and I get all my news from Facebook, so I found the call on there. And this is a story, it's a story that I've been trying to write for a long time, but I never quite, had a medium where I could send it to. And then when I found out that it was like historical, I was able to take the original version of the story and just modify it so it would fit into the historical romance collection that you guys had.
Mm-hmm.
And I got part of the idea from a story that my father had told me about my grandmother, because my grandmother was a middle-aged woman during World War II, and she performed in a band, an all-girl band.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that was so interesting. I kind of created, I kind of had the story, but I used that as the backdrop, as the setting for the character.
So if you could set up the reading, I'm interested in, I one of the reasons why I created Lizzie's Bedtime Stories was I'd have authors do readings for the Liz McMullen Show, and I enjoyed the reading so much that I wanted longer readings, and so that's where this platform came from. So I've never heard, obviously, this read live, so I'm excited to hear your piece.
All right, great. This is a scene where Sid, she's the kind of gruff nightclub owner, and she's been struggling to piece together the band. The singer was missing, so they needed to get the band together because during the summertime, the weekend is packed with tourists. So they need to get their female band together, back during World War II. And this is the first night of rehearsal when this woman, Florence, who just joins the band, not only does she have the voice like a nightingale, she has captured Sid's attention right from the minute that she auditioned. So the scene is the first night of rehearsal. The first night of rehearsal, Sid strode into the hall, checking her watch, quietly doing a head count on the girls. "Hey, big shot," Mary, the piano player, called out. "So you decided to hire a singer on your own without even running it by us?" "Mary, don't you trust me, doll?" Sid asked. "I can tell who's got the goods." "She may have the goods, but does she have a clock?" "It's 6:31. She'll be here," Sid said, loosening her suddenly constricting tie. "Well, I hope for your sake we all like her." "I'm sorry I'm late," Florence shouted as she trotted into the hall. The traffic on East Broadway was murder. She blotted sweat from her face with a lace hanky and introduced herself to the girls in the band, saving the scowling Mary for last. "How do you do?" she said, offering Mary her hand. "Swell." Mary squeezed her fingers like a vice before heading to the piano. "You got quite a grip there," Florence drawled, as she walked to the microphone stand, center stage. "You can crack walnuts," she added in a fully audible mumble. "I operate a press machine at Sargent. It's tough on the hands," Mary said. "What do you do, bake pies?" Florence wheeled around on her heels. "I make fighter planes." She arched an eyebrow to mark a first-round victory. Sid's eyes darted between them. "You two are going to be real pals," she said, wringing her hands. "I could tell. You both take your music very serious." "Hey, can we get going here?" Louise asked from behind the drums. "My mother's already threatened that if I don't start getting home at a decent hour, I'll have to find a new babysitter." "Let's start with What'll I Do," Mary said. "You know that one, Cookie?" "Sure, Cookie," Florence said. "Who doesn't?" Sid leaned against the wall, watching carefully, praying the girls would click. Summer in Walnut Beach was the one season businesses made any real money. Tourists came in droves and only stayed and spent until September. The band had to start playing again. She had no doubt Florence had what it took to front the group. Her only concern, as usual, was Mary. She closed her eyes as Florence's voice carried her off with its dulcet falsettos and dipped her down into a husky lower register. Let Mary grouse all she wanted. The crowd this weekend wasn't going to know what hit them. After rehearsal, Sid found Florence's handkerchief on her music stand. She looked up and saw her last in line of the departing girls. "Hey, Florence, hang on," she called out. "Your handkerchief." Florence stopped as the rest of the girls filed out, with the exception of Mary, who lingered, rifling through her purse. "Thanks." Florence grabbed the hanky and turned to leave. "Wait a minute," Sid said, grasping for something to say. "Yeah," Florence said expectantly. "You sounded great, kid, really great. This is going to work out fine." Sid bestowed a cool wink of approval. "Thanks," Florence said. "The girls are really keen. Sweet sound." "You've got the sweet sound," Sid said shyly. An awkward silence swayed between them. Say, how long does it take Mary to defrost? Florence whispered. Sid shoved her hands in her pockets and avoided Florence's eyes. Aw, don't mind her. She's always got a bee in her bonnet. What happened? Her old man leave her for some sharecrop? Sid blushed. Something like that. Listen, I have to get going. Uncle Sam wants me reporting for factory duty bright and early. Sure, Sid said. Let me walk you to your car. You're talking to a girl who can fight off wolves on her own, remember? Florence threaded her arm under Sid's and they headed for the door. Gee, I hope I'm not being escorted by a wolf in Marlena Dietrich's clothing. Sid laughed. Do something else.
Ooh, I'd like to hang out with Marlena. A tip of that hat and I love Hollywood glamour. I've always been enamored of that, and I think the stuff that was produced during the 30s especially was so important because life was so hard that people needed a break, and so the silver screen was the way they made that happen.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you for doing such a cool teaser, listeners. You're going to have to see what that doll is going to do with that guy, if anything at all. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Lizzie's Bedtime Stories Valentine special. This special this year is dedicated to Through the Hourglass. MJ Williams contributed a really snappy story, and she's going to give us the privilege of reading an excerpt, and of course she's going to leave you hanging so that you simply have to buy Through the Hourglass to see what happens next. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, what attracted you to doing a historical short story?
Well, I like writing historical fiction anyway. I've got 3 or 4 historical novels out there. And matter of fact, my most recent novel that came out in November, Summer Passion, is included in the same basic time frame as my short story. I just like looking at different eras in the past and the roles that women played in it.
So can you set up the reading that you're going to do for us?
Sure. The story is called My Elizabeth, and it takes place in 1942 in an airplane building site. Jo is the main character. She's brand new building airplanes, and Miss DuPont is the HR person there. And basically, Jo is all excited to work in this place. She can wear dungarees to work. She feels different from other people, but she doesn't know why. And then again, there's Miss DuPont, who's the HR person, who you'll hear about when I read it.
Ta-ta-ta! Read to me, MJ.
All right. I felt good about my day, but as I approached Miss DuPont's office, I got butterflies in my stomach. I didn't understand my feelings, but I was so happy I got to see Miss DuPont again. I walked into the waiting area of her office, and her secretary told me that Miss DuPont would be with me right away. I couldn't sit still. I got up and paced the small room. "Are you okay, Jo?" Miss DuPont said. I hadn't heard the door open. I blushed. "Yes, I'm fine. I just need to learn about the time card." "Oh, yes, I didn't show you that this morning, did I?" "No, ma'am." "Well, come on into my office with me, and I'll give you a blank time card. After this, you'll find one with your name on it by the clock at the start of every pay period." I followed Miss DuPont into a small but nicely decorated office. I felt like I could barely breathe in the tight quarters. Something was wrong with me. I didn't know what. I wasn't normally claustrophobic. Miss DuPont went to the other side of the desk and opened a drawer. I watched her, but quickly looked away when I realized I could see down her blouse. I felt a blush creep over me. What was wrong with me? Miss DuPont took out a blank time card and wrote my name across the top of it. Then in the right column, she wrote the date, and in the next column, the time my day had started, 8 o'clock. "Now, every day when you get in here, when you leave, all these boxes will fill out automatically. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Great. Now follow me, and I'll show you where the time clock is." I did as I was instructed and watched as Miss DuPont inserted and removed the time card. "That seems easy enough," I said. "It is, but as always, any questions or concerns, you come see me." "Yes, ma'am." I was exhausted when I got home to my mom and dad's house. I ate dinner, but then begged off listening to the news as I really needed sleep. But a good night's sleep escaped me as my dreams were all haunted by Miss DuPont. At one point, I woke up in a cold sweat. I didn't know what was going on, but decided to avoid Miss DuPont at all costs in the future. I woke the next morning and ate breakfast with my parents, then showered and tied my long hair up in a bun before donning my dungarees and work shirt. I rode to work with my dad, who dropped me off at precisely 8 o'clock. I found my time card and punched the clock, then found my locker and got my equipment. I headed for my place on the floor and went to work. Mildred watched over me again for a while, but then told me I was good to go on my own. I was focused on my job when I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. It was Miss DuPont. I turned off my equipment and raised my mask. "Hi," I said, hoping my nerves wouldn't make my voice quiver. "Hi, I just wanted to check in with you and see how things are going." "They're going great. Mildred watched me for a while this morning, but now I'm on my own." The horn sounded then and the place went quiet. "I won't keep you from your lunch," Miss DuPont said. "I just wanted to check on you." "Thank you." I hurried past her to my locker to get my lunch bucket. I sat outside with some ladies from the day before. "Is everything okay?" Mildred asked me. "Sure," I said. "Why do you ask?" "Miss DuPont never comes down to the floor unless she's showing a new employee around. She just came by to make sure I was doing okay." The other ladies all looked at each other like they knew a secret. "What?" I said. "Nothing," Mildred said. "It's just that was nice of her." "Yeah, I thought so." Something didn't feel right to me. I felt like I was the butt of some joke that I didn't get. The table was quiet the rest of lunch, which only made my unease grow. The horn blew and I was relieved to get back to work. On the way in, I grabbed Mildred's arm. "What happened at lunch?" I asked. I felt like a pariah. "Oh, it was nothing, hon. Just do yourself a favor and stay away from Miss DuPont. She's not like the rest of us." "What do you mean?" "I mean, she's different." "How so?" "You know, different." "I don't understand," I said, "but I'll take your word for it." We worked the rest of the day, and after that the days fell into an easy routine. I knew my way around the shop by then and was becoming known as an excellent welder. I sat with the same group at lunch every day, and nothing more was said about Miss DuPont. And no more visits were made by Miss DuPont. Things were going smoothly for me. I loved my job. I loved helping to make airplanes that would eventually bomb the Nazis. At least that's how I pictured it. At the end of the day, several weeks later, I was walking toward the time clock. This meant walking past Miss DuPont's office. She came out of her office this particular evening and grabbed me by the arm. I felt the heat sear into my arm. I wondered what that meant. "Joe, can you come in here for a moment?" Miss DuPont said. "Sure." I looked around to make sure none of my friends saw me. I didn't want any of them to think I was different. "Joe, you've been doing a great job," Miss DuPont said. "Thank you. I'm fairly sure you're going to be made a riveter any day now." "Oh, thank you, Miss DuPont. That would be wonderful. And I was thinking, I'd like to have you over to my house for dinner to celebrate." An alarm went off inside me. Something told me this was a very bad idea. And yet the butterflies were back. I thought how nice it would be to be with Miss DuPont away from the factory. "Joe?" "Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'd like that very much." "Obviously, we'll have to keep it a secret," Miss DuPont said. "We can't have the other workers knowing about it." "Oh, of course." "Wonderful. Shall we plan on tomorrow night?" "Sounds swell." "Okay, I'll see you then. You can ride home with me, and then I'll take you to your house after dinner." I walked off with a spring in my step. I didn't know why I was so happy and so excited for dinner. Probably because I was about to get a promotion, I reasoned. But whatever the reason, I couldn't wipe the smile from my face. That night, I told my parents I was going to be having dinner with a woman from work the next night. "Oh, dear, that's wonderful," my mother said. "It's great that you're making friends." "Yes, it is. I'm very excited." "Good for you, Josephine," my father said. "I don't know what time I'll be home tomorrow night," I said. "I'll wait up for you regardless," my father said. I went to work in an abnormally good mood the next day. I was actually whistling while I waited to punch in. Mildred was in line in front of me. "You're in a good mood today." "I am," I said. "It's a beautiful day." "Yes, I suppose it is." I worked all day, and at the end of the day, I punched out as usual. Then I went back to Miss DuPont's office. Her secretary had already left for the day, so I knocked on her door. She opened her door and smiled broadly. "Hello, Joe. I'm so glad you didn't forget." "No, ma'am." "Are you ready to go then?" "Yes, ma'am." "Great. And Joe?" "Yes, ma'am." "You don't need to call me ma'am when it's just the two of us." "Yes, ma'am. Okay." We both laughed and my nerves began to unwind slightly. She drove me to a small house on Chestnut Street. "This was my parents' house while they were alive," she told me. "I'm sorry." "Oh, don't worry. It's been a while. So now the place is mine. I've made it as homey as I can." We walked inside and I looked around. The furniture was well kept and the doilies on the armrests were clean and tidy. "Did you make these yourself?" I held up a doily. "I did. I used to love to make things like that. But things are in short supply these days, so I keep myself busy knitting socks for the soldiers. There's always plenty of wool. That's great. I should learn to knit. I could teach you, she said. That would be swell. May I get you something to drink? It won't take long for dinner. Would you like a glass of wine? Wine sounds great. I seldom drank. It just seemed odd to do living with my parents, and I didn't get out much, so I guessed a glass of wine would be a nice grown-up thing to have. Wonderful. Excuse me while I go pour it. She brought me a glass and pointed to the couch. Please, sit. But I thought maybe you'd like some help making dinner. No, you relax, she said. Please? I'd be more comfortable if I was helping. It was true. I didn't understand why, but a profound sense of discomfort coursed through me. Well, if you'd like, you can make the salad, Miss DuPont said. Great. I walked into the tiny kitchen where she had a variety of vegetables laid out by the sink. These are from my victory garden, she said. That's great, I said. It's wonderful that you're doing your part. She went to work mixing items on the stove for the spaghetti she was making. At one point, we turned toward the sink at the same time. I stood so close to her I could smell her scent, the faint scent of her perfume. The butterflies in my stomach were back. We stood facing each other, looking into each other's eyes. I wanted to kiss her. I realized it and almost dropped the big bowl of salad I was holding. Maybe I was different. I wondered if that's what the ladies at work meant about Miss DuPont. It took every ounce of self-control I had not to lower my head to taste her lips. Instead, I took a step back. I'm sorry, I'm in your way. Oh, no, Joe, you can never be in my way. She touched my elbow and the fire burned hot. The sound of my name on her lips was different now. I thought about leaving. I was so confused, but I liked the feelings, strange though they were, and as much as I hated to admit it, I still wanted to kiss her. We ate dinner in a small cove to the side of the kitchen. Your house is so quaint, I said. I really like it. She went on to tell me about the year it was built and the architect who designed it, but I really didn't hear anything. I saw her lips move and could think of nothing else but kissing them. I'd never kissed anyone before, so this was a big step, and she was a woman, but it was still all I could think about. After dinner, I helped her clear the plates and offered to help clean up. No, let's sit on the couch and talk. I'll clean up later, she said. I hardly think that's fair, Miss DuPont. It's my house, and if I say it's fair, it's fair. By the way, when we're here, please call me Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I tried the name on my tongue. Okay, I can do that. You're very cute, Joe, she said. Thank you. Yes, I meant it as a compliment. Now can we move to the couch? Okay, Elizabeth. I love that name. I'd never heard a name so lovely, and it fit her. We sat on the couch and my legs started bouncing. I had no control over it. Are you nervous, Joe, she said. Should I be? I don't know. She placed her hand on my leg. Should you be? I don't know, I said. She moved closer to me on the couch. I really like you, Joe. I really like you, too. Do you like girls or boys, Joe? I don't know, I said. Have you ever kissed a boy? No. Have you ever kissed a girl? You can tell me. No. Well, Joe, she moved closer still. I want to kiss you. I want you to kiss me, I said. She leaned into me. I watched her lips get closer. I closed my eyes just as our lips met. Hers were so soft and tender. I wanted to kiss her again and again. And that's where I'm leaving it.
Oh my God. Tease, tease, tease.
Indeed. I don't think I mentioned this was World War II that I was reading about. I don't think I mentioned that in the beginning.
That's my own fault for not even giving you. I'm a terrible publisher. Oh goodness, like that would. It's like,
you okay there?
Yeah, it's like, do you want to kiss? I want to kiss. I think we should be kissing. Let's kiss.
Yes,
all right,
let's kiss.
Let's do this kissing thing.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to keep this recording short and sweet, and I'm sure people are going to be like, rewind, rewind. And yes, wonderful. So thank you for coming on and doing an excerpt for me.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.